So most of you know, how many people are in the mind trainings, Lojong intensive? Yeah. So these people, so for those who aren't, the mind trainings, the Lojong, are a classical, wonderful body of teachings and practice that actually come out of India in the first 600,000-800,000 years of Buddhism in India, and came to Tibet, where many of the, when Buddhism was going through a decline and actually going through a lot of disruption because of other forces, there was a lot of cross-pollination, since Tibet was fairly close to India. So there were many Indian teachers going to Tibet, Tibetans coming down into India, studying at the great universities, bringing texts back. So a lot of the preservation of the fruit, the flowering of Indian Buddhism, I mean, not that it didn't spread all throughout Asia, but a lot of, especially a lot of it was preserved in Tibet, or really had been preserved until the recent tragedy. When again, many of the texts and the teachings that had been brought from India and were kept in Tibetan monasteries for 1,000 years were destroyed when the Chinese communists took over Tibet. So anyhow, this is a little fragment. So there are lots of fragments. So we've been doing mind trainings, and they're very, I mean, mind trainings is we've been using one text of the 58 or 57 or 59 slogans. How many are there? Something like that. High 50s, how many? 59, thank you. But this is a book called Essential Mind Training, translated and introduced by Thupten Jinpa. Thupten Jinpa is actually has been the translator for the Dalai Lama for decades. So this is a book he put together with lots of original texts, of which the 59 slogan one is just one of the most well-known, but there are many. So he's got some major ones, and then he's got some little minor ones at the end, just a couple of pages. So this is some little minor one by somebody called Sumpa Lotsawa. Lotsawa is it just means a translator. So he was one of those early translators that not much is known about. And 12th, early 13th century. So anyhow, that, not much is known about him, but that in other words, he was a translator, and I believe he went from Tibet to Nepal, which again was then a Buddhist country, and helped translate text. So this is just a little thing called Sumpa Lotsawa's ear-whispered mind training. Ear-whispered kind of is a phrase. It kind of, it's like, it's not something written down. It's something, whispered. So it's very intimate. Like the teacher whispers it in your ear. So he's whispering something to us. So I guess at some point, Sumpa, when one of his travels to India, it says just before he returned to Tibet, he brought his leftover gold to offer to the Great Enlightenment Monument of Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya is where the Buddha came to enlightenment. It's always been a center of pilgrimage under the Bodhi tree, and even for many centuries, Buddhists have gone there. So he had gold. See, in the old days. See, nowadays we think what? We think cars are worth a lot of money, homes are worth a lot of money, a good meal is worth a lot of money, we'll pay for this, a nice cruise was worth a lot of money. In the old days, I used to think Dharma was worth a lot of money. So, very strange, eh? They think, oh, wow, of all the things in the world, that which liberates you and creates the basis for happiness and well-being, that has value, right? So traditionally, when somebody wanted to go around and take teachings from masters, they would bring gold to offer. It's not as if the teachers wouldn't teach them anyway, but it was a sign of, oh, this is precious. Right? This has great value. You say, again, I mean, we'll spend all kind of money for a house or a home or a new kitchen or all kind of stuff, right? Oh, that has value. Something that can do what? I mean, what can a new kitchen do for us? At the very least, it can what? I mean, what can it do that the old kitchen didn't do? Huh? But something we place great value on that. But Dharma, it's like, throw 5 buckets in the bowl, $5 in the bowl. But in the old days, they wouldn't just do it that way. I mean, even when I was in Asia, even decades ago, you never went to a teacher without making an offering, even a little one, if that's all you could do. It was just an acknowledgement that you were receiving something of value. It wasn't the teacher wanted anything or expected anything or needed anything. It was from the students, the asker's point of view, showing value. This transaction has value, meaning to me. So anyhow, I guess he'd been going around taking teachings, but he had some leftover gold. So he went to the Enlightenment Stupa, and while he was there, he was circumambulating, going round and round. There were 2 women, one reddish and one bluish. They were circumambulating the stupa as well. Sometimes they were hovering above in the sky, and other times they appeared to be walking on the ground. Things used to happen like that in the old days. I mean, I've been to Bodh Gaya many times. I've never seen it, but those are the old days. So the bluish woman says to the reddish one, "Last night I felt mentally restless. I felt like going somewhere. I hope this is not some premonition about my death, for I am terrified of dying." Interesting. That's not that unknown to us, is it? That kind of restlessness, that kind of not being at ease. And we want to kind of get out of that uncomfortable feeling, so we want to go somewhere. But we hope that it's not a bad place we're going to, especially like dying. So she asked her companion for a question. To this, the reddish woman, casting side glances at the Lotsawa. So obviously we're thinking, so she's speaking not just for the woman, but also for him. Responded to her companion as follows. "If you have a sense of abandonment, O lady, everything you do will bring happiness. Your mind suffers because it lacks this quality of abandonment. If your mind rests where it is placed, O lady, it will be okay even if you travel elsewhere. Your mind suffers because it cannot rest where it is placed. If your mind is turned to Dharma, O lady, you can die with ease. Your mind suffers because it is not usually turned to Dharma. If you recognized your mind as unborn, O lady, there will be no death. Your mind suffers because you have failed to recognize your mind is unborn." At that point, it is said that the Lotsawa overcame his sadness. It didn't say earlier that he was sad, so I don't know what he was sad about. At this point, he overcame his sadness. Maybe his sadness was that he hadn't had the realizations he had hoped. Because at that point, he overcame his sadness. The practices he had learned in the past became effective, and extraordinary realizations arose in his mind. And this was his introduction to the practice, what arose in his mind. It says, it is taught that if you have a sense of acceptance, you will be content with whatever material resources you have commensurate with your karmic potential you have stored for yourself. You will not envy others' prosperity, and you will ensure that your immediate circumstances, however, whether happy or painful, will not burden your heart. So, again, it says, if you have a sense of abandonment, everything you will do will bring happiness. Your mind suffers because it doesn't have this sense of abandonment. And here he says it a little differently about envy, about not accepting one's circumstances, happy or painful. So again, what is it that we need to abandon? What does he mean by abandonment? Any ideas? Yes. Yeah, abandonment. Yeah. So, but what is it needs to be abandoned? Attachment to outcome, we might say, has to be abandoned. Yeah, abandonment to, we have to abandon all our, envy is about what? What? I, me, and mine, wanting things to be different, wanting things to be this, not happy with one situation, and being somebody else's situation. All that needs to be abandoned. Because why? Not because it's inherently bad, because it's the source of our suffering. It's the heaviness of our heart. So rather than always working it, right? And many of us, our approach to practice is what? We work it. We work on things. That seems to be our kind of way of doing things in this country, right? Everything's a project that we work at, right? And so many people, they practice Dharma in the same way. They're always working. I'm working on this one, right? If you listen, that's what people say. I'm working on this issue. I'm working on that thing. I'm working really busy. Not only am I busy at work, but I'll get all this Dharma work I'm busy at. Very busy. So he doesn't say, work. He says what? Abandon. Much, much easier. Can you see how simple that is? Abandon it. Let it go. It's not good. Put it down. For most of us, that's scary. Because we are so identified with our issues and with our things and wanting things to be one way and not wanting things to be another way. Thinking if I get this, my life will be better, and if I didn't have that, my life would be. You know what I'm saying? That's, for most people, that's what, that kind of process is what's always going on in their mind. Right? So this teaching is so simple. Abandonment. Abandonment leads to what? Acceptance. If you have a sense of abandonment, everything you do will bring happiness. Your mind suffers because it lacks this quality of abandonment. Wow. How do you like this for strong medicine? How many people want to put this one on their shelf? Just stop all this nonsense. Just accept everything just as it is. Me, my mind, you, the world, the Paris-talks, right? It is what it is, right? No matter whether we love it or hate it, right? It's still there, isn't it? At the end of the day, we have to realize, right, John, logically, no matter how much emotional gyrations we go through, it hasn't changed anything, has it? Right? That's the truth. And all our emotional gyrations have not only changed anything, but they've caused us suffering, which often makes it more difficult to act intelligently and wisely, right? Yeah. Again, see, John, that's the benefit of our analytical mind. We can kind of see that, right? Tortoises don't have that ability, do they? No. There are advantages to being human beings. There are advantages to being gopher tortoises. But there are advantages to being a human being, too. Yeah. You will, if you do not envy, you will ensure that your immediate circumstances, whether happy or painful, will not burden your heart. Again, that's hard for us, isn't it? Because we have no problem accepting the good things in our life. But those things that are painful, difficult, people, situations, our own things going on in our own body, we don't want to accept those, do we? We really want those to go away. And what is the truth? They are here. And if we would just accept, if we would abandon our resistance to the unfolding of life, then we have the capacity of being at ease and happy. I mean, it's really that simple. If your mind rests where it is placed, it'll be okay even if you travel elsewhere. Your mind suffers because it cannot rest where it is placed. You know, who talks about this? Right? You know, you put on the news, Fox or CNN. I mean, is this what they're talking about? No. Learn to rest your mind where it is placed, and it will be okay even if you travel elsewhere. Your mind suffers because it cannot rest where it is placed. Where do we want our mind? I mean, what a question, right? Whoever thinks about such a thing? You know, where do I want my mind to rest, to be? Do I want it to rest on everything I see? Everything I hear? Everything, you know? Is that where you're hearing? Do I want it to rest on every person and every situation and every crisis and every personality? And I mean, is that where I want my mind to be resting? No, why not? It's not restful, is it? I mean, who would want to, you know, that's like, you know, resting on a, you know, on Inner Springs or something. It's not a good night's rest, is it? You want to rest on what? Posturepedic, right? We want to rest, or I don't know. Posturepedic? No. What are they called? What is that one that's always advertised? Tempur-pedic. We want to rest on Tempur-pedic, yeah. Something that we can rest on. So if we want a mind at ease, we want a mind at rest, we have to place it on something that is restful. Such as what? Well, for starters, our breath. Right? Our breath is restful. There's nothing going on there, is it? It's even, it's rhythmic, it's restful. Why not place our mind there? Or why don't I rest my mind on compassionate thoughts? Rest my mind on metta, on loving thoughts. Right? That's a good place to rest the mind. Feels good. So again, where do I rest my mind? Where do I place my mind? Do I place it in a place that is peaceful, restful? Or do I place it in the blender? It just gets stirred up. Right? Is that clear? I mean, you see how simple the medicine is. If your mind is turned to Dharma, old lady, this is old lady, not old lady, old lady, you can die with ease. Your mind suffers because it's not usually turned to Dharma. So if we asked ourselves, to take an inventory of our mind from the moment it wakes up to the moment it goes to bed, how many would say, well, I'd say my mind is about 90%, 95% occupied with dharmic thoughts? Well, what would you say, Bill? No? Yeah. No. If we ask ourselves honestly, where is our mind? Where is our mind turned most of the day? We'd have to say what? Self, and its self-concerns, or all kinds of things, right? Yeah. If your mind is turned to Dharma, you can die with ease. Your mind suffers because it is not usually turned to Dharma. Again, this doesn't mean that you need to abandon the world and be, home, always meditating and always reading Dharma texts. I mean, one could see that in a very formal way. Oh, I get the answer. I'll just, in a very formal, concrete way, always keep. But Dharma is more than that. It's more than a body of teachings and a cushion. Right? Dharma means the way of understanding and compassion. If the mind is filled or is mostly occupied with thoughts and actions and words that are in the service of understanding and compassion, of altruism, of caring, of thinking of others, of wanting to help others, trying to bring peace and understanding. And when it's not, resting on the breath, calming, stabilizing, right? That is a mind that is turned to Dharma. But if our mind all day is just filled with self-concern and judgments and criticism and hurts and resentments and fears and worries and sadnesses and losses and despair, is that a mind that's turned to Dharma? No. It's turned totally to the world. But in a way that doesn't produce understanding or ease or well-being. Right? So if your mind is turned to Dharma, oh lady, you can die with ease. Your mind suffers because it's not usually turned to Dharma. And then he said in his introduction, this is what he's whispering. He says, you need to recognize the nature of your own mind, guard your own place, and attain freedom on the basis of blessings from your spiritual teachers and on the basis of applying special meditation techniques. So now why does they say you have to recognize the nature of your mind? This is a very, for many people, something they've never heard before, right? I mean, a lot of these things we've never heard before, have we? I mean, we've never heard anybody talk about, the nature of mind. Again, who talks about that? Is that what they talk about at work? I mean, at the lunchroom, is that what people are talking about, right? No, they don't. At your work, they're not talking about the nature of mind. No, never even mentioned it. If you mentioned it at the lunchroom, how would people respond? Right? Yeah. So it's interesting, right? That these kind of questions that at different times in different cultures might have been more accessible. They're just so far from our experience here in the West, isn't it, these days? Now, why? I mean, people, we will talk endlessly about our problems, right? So if you in the lunchroom talked about problems, relationship problems, or somebody who's doing something, people would be very attentive, wouldn't they? I mean, that's kind of, people gossiping about this one or that one, it's like, well, it's a good lunch period, right? But if so it's interesting. We are obsessed with the things our mind perceives and our mind think about, right? But we never ask the question, which is what he's getting at, what is this mind? Which one would think would be the most fundamental question one would want to answer, right? Since even in the lunchroom, right, people who've never heard of Dharma, if you ask them, your happiness or your unhappiness, your sadness, your anger, your fear, your joy, where is it arising? They'd probably say, where? In my mind, in me. And if you probe a little more, so most people would say, oh, yeah, I understand. Thoughts, feelings, they arise in my mind, right? So most people, while acknowledging that their happiness, their sadness, their anger, their hurt, their joy, their love, all these things are arising in the mind and have a lot to do with the way the mind is operating, the mind is thinking, right? Yet they never ask that question, what is my mind? What is a mind? What is its nature? Right? So, but you can see in other traditions, that is the most fundamental question to understand. What is my mind? What is the nature of this awareness? And especially if one has questions about death, asking a question about is the nature of this mind unborn? The unborn nature of mind. Does it have a beginning? Does it have an end? Because usually when we are afraid of death, because we clearly understand, it's obvious to anybody that there seems to be birth and death in terms of the body, right? That's obvious, right? We all have birth certificates and then we'll get a death certificate. It's kind of like they give us a certificate when we come in and then they give us a certificate when we get out. It's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of our world, right? We give people a certificate for everything. Birth certificate, death certificate. Right? I mean, you're not officially dead until you get a certificate. Isn't that true? Right? And some people think Obama wasn't really born because they can't see his birth certificate. I was reading that the other day. People Well, it is said that this mind of ours is unborn. It had no place of its beginning. And if that is really the nature of our mind, that it is unborn, which means, of course, that therefore it is deathless, well, that would be a wonderful thing to conceptually know, and even more wonderfully to experientially experience, wouldn't it? To know that. There will be no death if you recognize your mind as unborn. Your mind suffers because you have failed to recognize your mind as unborn. The fusion of your mind with Dharma is this very lucid awareness of yours. It is vital that you recognize its true nature. To realize the mind as unborn is to realize its origination and to cease its death. The realization where you no longer differentiate between the actual meditation session and the periods in between sessions as concerns the mind, and learning that the mind is free of origination, cessation, and abiding, this realization has no death. So here we're talking about, probably the deepest, in a certain sense, aspect of the Buddhist meditative path, which is really, again, understanding the nature of this mind. But again, don't make this too esoteric, because what he's talking about is our minds. And everybody in here has a mind. Is that true? Right? Everybody have a mind? Right. So everybody who is perceiving me right now, perceiving this hall, hearing the sounds of the voice, seeing the sights, feeling sensations in your body, you would say all this is occurring within your what? Your mind. So it's not so esoteric. So this right now is your mind. Right? If you didn't have a mind, would you know you were in the meditation hall? You can't even imagine not having a mind, because even the imagination of not having a mind is going on in your mind. Right? Try that one. So, all of this, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, tasting, thinking, feeling, remembering, all of this is arising within mind. Right? What is mind? That which is listening to me right now, seeing me right now. This is your mind. So the question is, what is this? Right? What is this? This awareness. Does it have a beginning? Does it have an end? Does it have a shape or a size? Does it begin somewhere and end somewhere? Is it turned on with a switch? Is it ever turned off? Who could turn it off? So this beginning to probe deeply into the mind's nature is considered the most fundamental direct experience that one could have. And so these are the kind of things in the old days that teachers would whisper to their students. And it's not that it's like, most people whisper, kind of whisper what? Secrets, like gossip. Let me tell you about this. See, this is a different kind of whispering. The reason he's whispering and not saying out loud, because why? Because most people wouldn't understand this, would they? Most people wouldn't be interested or understand this. So he whispers it just in the ear of the student, just so they can hear it. The other thing about usually whispering, usually when somebody whispers something to us, we tend to be very attentive, right? Because they're talking softly, so you have to listen a little harder. And usually if they're whispering something, we know it's something important. I want to tell you something very important, right? So a teaching that is whispered is something very important. So this is why this teaching is called his ear-whispered mind training, right? We've been studying the 59 more outwardly, overtly spoken ones. But these are the ones in the middle of the night the teachers whisper in the ear of their students. And here's like another 4-line stanza of the same thing, a little different. If you can tolerate anything, whatever you do brings happiness. If your mind rests where it's placed, you can journey anywhere. If your mind is fused with Dharma, it's okay even if you die. If you have recognized the mind as unborn, there is no death. So these are the ear-whispered mind trainings of Sumpa Lotsawa. Any questions about these teachings, or about how to practice them, or how to understand them? Anything not clear? Take a moment to... Yes?
So, that was really deep. Kind of like to translate state for me.
Mm-hmm.
But so the body being the vessel that it is,
Mm-hmm.
is engaged with that unborn mind
Mm-hmm.
and carried through a life,
Mm-hmm.
physical life,
Mm-hmm.
and then continues once it's released from the physical.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's not really a question, it's just, so it is said that when someone does die and you are physically present to their death, it does seem that the mind is released, the mindfulness is released, and that the body is released. Is almost peaceful because it doesn't left.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense now that that teaching
Mm-hmm.
is been taught.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
No, good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's been in the presence of someone who is dying or dead, that's very obvious. Something is left. Because physically they're still there. Their eyes are still here. I mean, though it's physically they're, and for a little while they actually look they look the same. But yet it's very clear, something is not there. That which we thought was our beloved, our relative, our friend, we always thought they were their body. But then when we see the body without them, we understood that we always misperceived, didn't we? We thought they were the body, but they weren't. So that's why meditating on death or being present to people who are dying can be very meaningful, because it reveals that truth, obvious to anybody. Something has left. But if something left, then it would have had to enter at some point.